We all have those moments, right? A strange ache, a sudden dip in energy, or maybe a headache that just doesn't feel right.
Mm.
And our first instinct, most of the time is to just file it away.
Right. Under stress or bad night's sleep.
Exactly. But what happens when your body moves past that whisper and begins a catastrophic shout?
That's the space we're exploring today. We're doing a deep dive into the body's ultimate emergency alarm system,
Okay.
learning to recognize not just those slow, subtle red flags, but the acute, catastrophic sentinel signals.
The ones that demand you act in the next few minutes, not the next few days.
Precisely.
So our mission in this deep dive is to equip you with the knowledge to see those critical, life-threatening signals, and just as importantly, to understand the few critical first aid steps you need to take.
Because in critical care, the core principle is always, time is tissue.
Time is tissue.
Once the body's overwhelmed, every single second matters. We've synthesized the source material around three main pathways where the body can fail acutely:
Okay, what are they?
cardiovascular, neurological, and the circulatory system. And we'll show you how to tell those emergencies apart. But first, let's talk about the persistent warnings, the ones that aren't an emergency right now.
But are a definite signal that you need to schedule that doctor's appointment.
Exactly.
We're calling these the subtle red flags, and they're critical because they're really a window of opportunity, a chance to intervene before a crisis. So Dr. O'Neill's research highlights three major categories here. Let's start with one that seems almost universal: unrelenting abnormal fatigue.
And it's really important to qualify what we mean by abnormal.
Right, because everyone gets tired.
Everyone gets tired. You had a late night, you ran a marathon, that's normal. The red flag here is the feeling of being perpetually running on empty,
Just constant exhaustion.
constant exhaustion that hangs around even after you've had what should be enough sleep. It's a systemic lack of reserves.
And what does that kind of unrelenting fatigue typically mask? Because I think a lot of people just immediately assume,
Low iron, maybe?
yeah, low iron or just, bad sleep hygiene.
And those are definitely possibilities, but clinically, the range of what it could be is just vast. Constant unremitting fatigue is a reason for a checkup because it can be the first sign of something much more serious.
Like what?
We're talking about chronic infections, thyroid disorders, autoimmune diseases that are just starting up, or, and this is a big one, early signs of certain heart issues.
Where the heart just isn't pumping efficiently.
Right. It's not oxygenating the body fully. The symptom is vague, but the cause can be profound.
The sources also suggest that if this exhaustion comes with other seemingly minor symptoms,
Right,
like a subtle shortness of breath, maybe some dizziness or unusual mood shifts, then the urgency just goes way up.
Absolutely. It's the constellation of symptoms, not just the fatigue alone. Think of it as a persistent energy deficit.
Okay, so the second flag is one that at first might not seem so bad, but clinically can be terrifying: unexplained weight loss.
This is weight just dropping off without you changing your diet or your exercise routine.
Right, you're not trying to lose it.
And we need a clinical threshold here. Otherwise, people panic after losing a couple of pounds.
So what's the number?
The point where you need an appointment is losing more than 5% of your body weight, or let's say more than 10 pounds in the past few months.
And why is that specific threshold so important?
Because that level of involuntary weight loss suggests a serious underlying process is consuming your body's resources.
Okay.
It could be severe digestive disorders where you're not absorbing nutrients, or infections that are ramping up your metabolism, or, most worrisomely, it can be a sign of cancer, which can silently drive extreme catabolism.
So if you haven't been trying and you hit that 5% mark, you have to find out why your body is consuming itself.
You do.
And that brings us to the last and maybe the most frustrating red flag, that nagging sense of just feeling off.
This is the most subjective one, but you could argue it's the most powerful warning.
That gut feeling.
It's that intuitive feeling that something is deeply wrong. A new, persistent pain that doesn't go away, or just a continuous state of not feeling like yourself. Dr. O'Neill's key takeaway really rings true here. You know your body best.
I can just imagine a doctor dismissing that, What exactly is offness?
And that's where the trust comes in. If a symptom is new, persistent, and genuinely concerns you, the professional responsibility is to investigate. We find cases where persistent, mild headaches or a slight difficulty swallowing.
Things you might ignore.
Exactly. Things you might ignore turn out to be the only early indicator of a serious disease. The takeaway is that your instinct is often medically valid.
So if the body's been whispering these warnings, that's when you call the doctor.
For a scheduled visit, yes.
But what happens when the whisper turns into a sudden catastrophic roar? Let's move to those acute crises, the sentinel signals that require a 911 call.
Let's do it. We'll start with the most famous of these acute failures, our first major category, sudden cardiopulmonary compromise.
Okay, so a catastrophic failure of the heart's pump or the lung's ability to get oxygen.
It makes it impossible to sustain life.
The classic example is, of course, a heart attack, a myocardial infarction. And everyone thinks chest pain. But how do we distinguish that from, say, heartburn?
We look at the quality and the duration. A critical heart event usually involves discomfort in the center of the chest that lasts more than a few minutes, or it keeps coming back.
And it's not a sharp pain.
No, crucially, it's not typically a sharp, localized pain you can point to with one finger. It's often described as pressure, squeezing, heaviness, like an elephant is sitting on your chest.
Which leads to that famous clue, radiation. Why is it such a huge deal for doctors when the pain spreads to the arm or the jaw?
That radiation pattern, often into one or both arms, the back or the jaw, is key because of what we call referred pain pathways.
The wiring gets crossed,
Yeah.
basically.
In a way, yes. The nerves signaling pain from the heart travel through the same spinal segments as nerves from those other areas. So the brain gets confused and thinks the signal is from the jaw, even though the problem is the heart.
We absolutely have to talk about the non-traditional presentation, though. The sources are clear that for a lot of people, it looks completely different.
That's right. For women, for instance, the main symptoms are often not that crushing chest pain.
What is it then?
It can be overwhelming, sudden fatigue, profound shortness of breath, nausea, or vomiting. Symptoms that are so easily mistaken for the flu or bad indigestion.
Wow.
Similarly, people with diabetes might have blunted pain signals because of nerve damage. For them, those non-chest symptoms might be the only indicator of a cardiac crisis.
We have to look past the Hollywood version of a heart attack.
Absolutely.
So moving from the pump to the lungs, what defines acute respiratory failure that needs a 911 call?
It's the sudden and profound severity of the difficulty breathing, the dyspnea.
So not just being a little winded.
No, we're talking about gasping, choking, an inability to speak in full sentences without pausing to desperately catch a breath.
And one of the scariest forms of this is a pulmonary embolism, a clot in the lungs. What's the definitive clue for a bystander?
A PE is characterized by sudden, unexplained shortness of breath that gets worse even at rest. And it's combined with a sharp chest pain that intensifies when you breathe deep or cough.
And the critical clue.
The critical clue is when this acute shortness of breath is paired with pain, swelling, or redness in one of the legs.
Ah, because that signals the source of the clot.
Exactly. That leg symptom points to a deep vein thrombosis, a DVT, which is the original clot that broke off and traveled to the lung. If you see those two things together, the probability of a PE is extremely high.
So we've covered the pump and the oxygen exchange. Let's move to the second catastrophic failure, sudden neurological impairment, the brain's wiring system failing.
And here, the time sensitivity shifts from critical to absolute. This pathway has the tightest intervention window in all of medicine, which is why we rely so heavily on the FAST signs for stroke.
Let's review them.
Sudden face drooping, arm weakness, especially on one side, speech difficulty like slurring or confusion, and T for time to call emergency services.
But the TIA trap is where people get complacent, a transient ischemic attack. It has all the same symptoms, the one-sided weakness, the slurred speech, but they go away, sometimes in minutes.
And the average person thinks, the weakness went away, I must be fine.
Which is the single most dangerous error you can make.
It absolutely is. The symptoms resolving does not mean the danger has passed. A TIA is a powerful pre-stroke alarm. You must still call EMS.
But why? If the blockage was temporary, why the same urgency as a full stroke? What does the data show?
The risk is immediate and profound. The data shows the risk of a major disabling stroke after a TIA is critically high, from 2 to 17% within 90 days.
That's huge.
But here's the shocking part. About half of those major strokes happen within the first 2 days after the TIA. The resolution of symptoms just means you got a free pass.
But the clock is now ticking.
The clock is ticking, and you have a massive instability in your cerebral circulation that has to be treated now.
Beyond clots, there's the most explosive neurological crisis. The aneurysm rupture, the thunderclap headache.
The key differentiator here is the speed of onset. It's an extremely severe headache that hits its maximum pain intensity instantly,
Not over minutes, but in seconds.
within seconds. Patients consistently call it the worst headache of my life, no matter their pain threshold. That speed is the critical difference,
Why?
because that abrupt onset signifies a catastrophic bleed, like a subarachnoid hemorrhage. If you feel a sudden onset of the worst pain you've ever felt that peaks in seconds, you call EMS, and you tell them suspected thunderclap headache so they can start the right protocols.
That brings us to our final category, which is maybe the most overwhelming because it's a systemic collapse. Sentinel signal 3, systemic shock and circulatory failure.
Right. If cardiopulmonary failure is the pump failing, systemic shock is the distribution system failing.
What do you mean by that?
It's a life-threatening condition where your organs just aren't getting enough oxygen-rich blood or perfusion, either because there isn't enough blood volume or the blood vessels have dilated so much that the pressure just bottoms out.
So regardless of the trigger blood loss, an allergic reaction, an infection, the body tries to compensate. What are the universal signs that the system is failing?
You look for a collection of things: a rapid, weak heartbeat, rapid and often shallow breathing, and skin that is cool, pale, and clammy.
But the biggest one.
The most profound sign is a change in mental status: restlessness, confusion, disorientation, or strong drowsiness. That's because the brain is the first organ to suffer from low oxygen.
And there's a crucial note in the sources for bystander assessment.
Yes, for individuals with darker skin tones, paleness or mottling, that's a patchy net-like coloring, is often more reliably detected on the palms of the hands, the soles of the feet, or the inner lining of the eyelids.
That's a detail that could save a life.
It could save critical time. And when shock is caused by the body's extreme response to infection, we call that sepsis.
Which people think only happens in hospitals.
Right, but nearly 80% of cases begin outside the hospital, from common things like pneumonia or a UTI.
So what are the key signs an infection has turned into septic shock?
You're looking for fever, shivering, or feeling profoundly cold, combined with that high heart rate and clammy skin. But the progression to septic shock is really signaled by profound confusion and this critical indicator: extreme pain or discomfort that is way out of proportion to the original infection.
And finally, anaphylactic shock. The signs are swelling of the tongue, difficult breathing, dizziness, collapse. This is the great protocol reversal you mentioned.
Yes, anaphylaxis is extremely time-sensitive because the airway can close so fast. The immediate priority is to administer the prescribed adrenaline, the epinephrine autoinjector first.
Before calling 911.
Before the call, you must inject the epinephrine to reverse the swelling and collapse. Once that's done, then you immediately call 911. It's counterintuitive, but in this one crisis, chemical intervention comes first.
That is an absolutely vital distinction. Okay, let's wrap up with the universal actions to take while EMS is on the way for any of these signals, because it's easy to freeze.
The core sequence is always check the scene, call 911, and give care. If you find someone collapsed, check for a response with the shout, tap, shout method on their shoulder for no more than 10 seconds.
While checking for breathing and bleeding.
Exactly.
Okay, if the person is unresponsive and not breathing normally.
That's cardiac arrest. You start CPR immediately. Push hard and fast in the center of the chest, about 2 compressions per second, until help arrives.
And if they're unresponsive, but they are breathing?
Your priority shifts to securing the airway. You put them in the recovery position. This isn't just for comfort. It's a vital move to stop their tongue from blocking the airway and to let fluids, like vomit or blood, drain out so they don't breathe them in.
How do we do that?
Gently roll the person onto their side. Tilt their head back slightly to keep the airway open. Bend their top leg to stabilize them so they don't roll forward.
Is there a time you shouldn't do that?
Yes. If you suspect a head, neck, or back injury, leave them as you found them unless you absolutely have to move them for CPR or to control bleeding. And never put anything under their head that could bend their neck forward.
Okay. And for general shock care, what is the absolute rule everyone needs to remember?
For any type of shock, lay the person down and if you can, elevate their legs and feet slightly. Keep them warm. But the absolute non-negotiable rule is do not give the person anything to eat or drink.
Not even a sip of water.
Not even a sip. If their consciousness is fluctuating or if they need surgery, any fluid in the stomach creates a severe risk of aspiration into the lungs. It prevents a secondary, often fatal complication. You just monitor them until help arrives.
We've covered a lot today. From the subtle warnings, that persistent fatigue, that unexplained weight loss, to the 3 acute sentinel signals: cardiopulmonary compromise, neurological failure, and systemic shock.
And we really reinforce those two critical exceptions to the call first rule. The immediate need for a hospital after a TIA, proving that a symptom going away doesn't mean the crisis is over.
Right. And the need to use epinephrine first in anaphylaxis, proving that decisive action in those first minutes truly saves lives.
It does.
It brings us to a final thought for you to consider. We often think of emergencies as symptoms that persist, chest pain that won't stop, weakness that lasts for days. But the clinical evidence shows that sometimes the transient nature of a symptom, like the minute a TIA lasts or the seconds it takes for a thunderclap headache to peak, is the most dangerous warning sign of all. So what other seemingly resolved symptoms in your life might you need to reevaluate, based entirely on the shocking speed of their onset? Something to mull over until our next deep dive.